The FFS2000 is a fusion splicing workstation which is capable of performing all steps of the splice process: strip, cleave, clean, splice, recoat, and proof test. This video will discuss how to load and unload fibres correctly at the splice station using the transfer jig. To produce high-performance splices that have low loss and high proof strength, it is vital that this is carried out correctly. If you have not yet watched the videos about stripping, cleaning and cleaving fibres using an FFS2000, click on the annotations or see the description below for links to view these first. Splicing is carried out at the splice station on the unit. There are several alignment holes situated around the splice station that accommodate the transfer jig. Before splicing, ensure there are two stripped, cleaned and cleaved fibres loaded into the left and right hand sides of the transfer jig at the splice station. The pins on the underside of the transfer jig will be resting on the metal platforms, also called bushings, surrounding these alignment holes. This will cause the jig to be raised slightly off the top surface of the unit. At the centre of the splice station is the Splice Head. This contains the omega-shaped filament used to apply heat to the fibres, and the lens used to view the fibres. On either side of the splice head are two graphite V-grooves that are connected to the external vacuum pump. These are used to support and locate the fibres during splicing. To load the fibres into the splice station, first click the Load Fibres icon in the software. Alternatively, press the blue button to start an automatic splice process, which will typically have load fibres as its first operation. This will move the splice head across to the right so that the filament is positioned at the ends of the fibres. Lift the transfer jig so that the pins on its underside are over the alignment holes around the splice head. Once in position, drop the transfer jig to locate the pins in these holes. The fibres will also be captured by the vacuum at the bottom of the graphite V-grooves. The transfer jig will now be resting on the top surface of the unit, and the fibres are now loaded into the splice station. To ensure strong splices, it is important to minimise contact with the bare glass of the fibre. When the fibres are loaded, the ends may well touch the filament. However, as this region of glass will be heated and reflowed, a high-strength splice can still be achieved. If the load fibres process is not used, the splice head will not move to the right-hand side, and the bare glass of the left-hand side fibre could be damaged by the filament as the fibres are loaded. This region of glass is not reheated, and so a low-strength splice might result. Once the fibres are loaded, visually check they are positioned correctly in the central channel of the splice head and sitting in the bottom of the graphite V-grooves. If required, the load fibres process, which is on a countdown, can be paused to allow corrective actions to be taken. Once the fibres are loaded satisfactorily, the load fibres process may be completed by either clicking close on the pop-up window, pressing the spacebar on the keyboard, or pressing the blue splice button on the machine. This will cause the splice head to move back to the left-hand side so that the fibre ends are positioned over the lens at the view position. The splice cap can be closed at either the beginning or the end of this operation and will allow the fibres to be viewed in the software. Ensure that the mirror toggle is facing backwards when the cap is closed to avoid damaging the mirror. Loaded fibres should appear in similar positions on screen when at the view position from one splice to the next. Once the splice is completed, the fibre can be removed from the splice station. It is important to avoid contact between the bare glass of the fibre and the filament. This will prevent damage to the glass and maintain a high proof strength. The final process in the splice file is to tension the fibre. This causes the fibre to be taut when removed from the splice station and helps to avoid damaging the glass. It is important to close any pop-up windows and processes prior to this to ensure that this tensioning occurs. Tensioning can also be done manually by using the Engage Motors icon. To remove the fibres, open the splice cap. Then, first lift the left side of the transfer jig and then the right side. This ensures that the fibre on the left side of the splice, which is surrounded by the filament, moves upwards vertically without touching the filament as the fibre is removed. Once the fibre has been removed from the splice head, the transfer jig can be placed on the metal platform surrounding the alignment holes as before.